Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're here to present to you a webinar, Tenant Screening Made Easy, presented to you by RentSpree. RentSpree is a CRMLS marketplace product. We've been working closely with the CRMLS since 2017, and we're really excited to show you today how to use our software and to give you a little bit of an overview of the tenant screening process as well. So I'll be your presenter today. My name is Steven Pastores. I'm the Customer Success Manager here at RentSpree. I help coordinate training webinars for all of our members and ensure that everybody who uses our software gets the most out of it. So we're going to go ahead and dive into our presentation today. So on the agenda, we're first going to go over some of the key tenant screening points. Next, we're going to dive into the different steps of the tenant screening process itself. Then we're going to go through a quick demonstration of the RentSpree software. And then finally, I'll answer a couple of questions at the end of the presentation. So to begin, now that we're in 2020 and we're still in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, we do have to ask ourselves, where is tenant screening headed? So the first point that I want to mention here are that there are many changing regulations in the real estate industry. So both at the citywide level and the state level, and even also the national level as well. So open houses are still not permitted. So it's important to, again, be on top of those regulations since they seem to be changing weekly, even daily. And alongside that, there's also increased risk involved in screening. So applicant information can possibly be mishandled and even stolen. So it's really important to protect yourself and also your applicant's information since a lot of the processes are handled online these days. So again, making sure to mitigate all those risks. When it comes time to incorporate new technology, which can help you streamline the process, you do also want to make sure that this technology minimizes your risk and also complies with the regulations that are changing constantly. Some of the current screening issues that are happening nowadays are firstly, breaches when handling sensitive information. So applicants are providing SSNs and copies of their driver's license in unsecured channels like email, and these run the risk of being hacked or stolen. Secondly, there's also the increased risk of an applicant identity fraud. So in some cases, an applicant may apply for an apartment or a home using the social security number of someone else. So this misrepresentation can lead to a trouble down the road. So it's really important to keep an eye on that and make sure that the applicant really is who they say they are. And finally, we're also want to caution the risk of discriminatory practices as well. So tenants can possibly be discriminated against on the basis of subjective criteria. So these include discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender identity, religion, and so forth. So it's important to keep this in mind when you're trying to minimize risks during the tenant screening process. Some of the key tenant screening points that I want to cover now are firstly, availability and accuracy. So a lot of the information that's being provided to you is given to you by the applicant themselves. So ask yourself, what information can I ask the applicant to give me? And then finally, since they're giving it to you, how accurate is information? So it will fall on you to kind of confirm everything and reach out to the different resources that you have available to again make sure that the applicant really is who they say they are. Secondly, it's important to again stay on top of the different laws and regulations that are changing constantly and being aware of the best practices of tenant screening while also figuring out ways to lower your risk. So figuring out ways where you don't have to handle the PII as much. Going off that point, figuring out ways to reduce cost. So think about the different components that are included as part of your current tenant screening process and figuring out ways to minimize those expenses and then correlated to that, reducing the time spent. So as you know, time is money, and working on a rental transaction, the revenue potential is less than a sales transaction. So it's really important to, again, streamline the process and minimize the time spent. So that way you can keep everything moving more quickly. Going off that point, the convenience factor, think about the different setup times that are involved in the tenant screening process. The applicant will usually have to fill out paperwork. They'll have to start collecting all this information and provide it to you. You'll have to meet the applicant in person to collect all the data. So again, it's important to start thinking about ways in which you can reduce the setup time, which will also help you reduce the turnaround time. Sometimes a screening report may take a couple of business days to actually be completed. So the applicant may not hear back from you. If, let's say they submit the request on Wednesday, they may not get it back until Friday or even Monday. So again, think about saving your time and also their time as well. Before the process, it's really important to set the screening criteria ahead of time. And this criteria should be objective and not subjective. So a couple of examples of objective criteria include a minimum rent to income ratio or a minimum credit score. So having those key factors delineated will help you make a decision based on irrefutable data. When it comes time to market the property, this is also your chance to set the screening criteria in the description. So for example, when you're listing a description of the property, you can also include towards the end some of the minimum requirements that you have in place in order for tenants to apply. So here's your chance to state that you require a minimum 650 credit score to apply, a minimum 3-to-1 rent to income ratio, and things of that nature. When you're doing that and when you're conducting the pre-screening, this will actually help you save time since you will know that you will only be receiving applicants who will possibly meet your requirements. During the process, you're going to want to show the property, again, making sure you're taking all the necessary precautions and favoring individual showings versus large groups. Secondly, once you have a pool in place, you're going to want to collect the rental applications and start running the screening reports on that applicant pool. Finally, you're going to want to verify the applicant information. You can do that in a couple of different ways, which we'll go over later on in the presentation. Secondly, you're going to want to issue a decision, so acceptance or denial. And then finally, you're going to onboard your chosen tenant and have them sign the lease agreement. When it comes time to market the property, the first point that's really important to consider here is the content creation. So again, when you're trying to advertise a property, it's important to consider what components will really attract the best quality renter. A detailed description, a couple of high-res pictures, even a video, maybe a 3D model of the property. All those different factors will make the description really pop and resonate with the renter, and that in turn will give you a better quality tenant. When it comes time to post the content, one important thing to consider is that everyone is staying at home during this time and more people are spending more time consuming content on the web. So there's different pathways and avenues you can take to start the promotion of your property. You can definitely tap into social media. So in this day and age, many consumers are using Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even LinkedIn to do their research on social, on properties. So consider tapping into those avenues and posting the description and the criteria on those sites, since more people are likely to be navigating to those sites and consuming content from there as well. You can also try the tried and true option of Craigslist, and then again, tapping into the MLS, again, different ways to start marketing the property online as you can. Again, when you're marketing the property, you're going to want to share the screening criteria on whatever description that you have. In this case, mentioning all those objective requirements so that your renters know exactly what you're looking for. So this will help you save your time and their time as well. Pre-screening first begins with a lot of back and forth questions. So you would want to ask your applicants what they would like to know about the property. So some of the questions that they can ask is, what are the square footage? Is there any shared walls in the property? Is there laundry on site? Things of that nature. So these are all questions that you should be prepared to answer. And this will help you get an idea of what's important to the tenant and see what kind of tenant they will be. Secondly, it's also going to fall on you to reiterate the terms of the rental. So in these cases, again, make sure that the length of the lease agreement is clearly stated. So if it's a 12-month lease or a 6-month lease or a month-to-month agreement, make sure to delineate that. And also here is your chance to offer any incentives. So in this case, if there's a 1-month free incentive on the rent, make sure to reiterate that to the applicant. And then when you're having a conversation with them, again, make sure to let them have room to talk. So let them tell you about themselves. And again, you let them know what your criteria is. So once you're having that conversation, this will help you develop a self-selecting pool. So those applicants who don't meet your minimum requirements will automatically take themselves off your list. Once you have the chance to show the property, there's a couple of different paths you can take. The first nowadays is a strong option since the individual showing will only let you have a one-on-one session with one applicant at a time. So if you're able to manage your schedule effectively, this can work since you will set a time that's convenient for both you and the applicant, and you can take as much time as you need to show them the property and give them some of the ins and outs and really answer all of their questions. And the great thing about the individual showing is that, again, that one-on-one time can help you develop a better relationship with the applicant and possibly lead to further transactions down the road. The downside, again, is if you're not really adept at managing your individual showing, and let's say sometimes a tenant cancels on you or is a no-show, you'd have lost an hour of your time. So it's really important to consider the pros and cons of the individual showing. Again, trying to figure out if you want to integrate showings with another possible way of showing the property. And in this case, when things go back to normal, you can start bringing back the open house. So the benefit of the open house is that it lets you interact with more than one applicant at a time. And really, if you're working with a large applicant pool, this could be a strong option for you. Now, the downside of the open house, again, is that you won't have the time to have a one-on-one discussion with each applicant. So it could make sense if you're working with a large applicant pool, but again, if you're focusing on developing a one-on-one relationship, it may not be the best option for you. The block showing here is really the best of both worlds, since if you block out a couple of hours in a day, and if you choose to instead have 30-minute to an hour increments with each applicant, you can both have that one-on-one time with each person and also have it with multiple applicants. So really think about that, incorporating a block showing into your schedule, since that way it's really the best of both options there. When you're collecting the rental application, these are a couple of the pieces of information that the applicant can provide to you. The first is their personal information, which can include their name and a form of ID, such as their SSN number or a copy of their driver's license. They will also be stating their anticipated move-in date, and if there will be other occupants living in the space as well. So if they will have roommates, it's really best to collect a screening application from each individual roommate who will be living at the property. They will also state their current and previous residence history and also the landlord for each of their previous homes. And they will also ideally provide to you the rent amount, so you can get an idea of how much they've been paying and if they have a strong track record of being able to continue the same rent payment. Thirdly, correlated to the rent payment, you can also request them to fill out the income history and their income information. So in this case, make sure to ask them to provide their current and previous employer data and also income from each of those positions and the contact info for each of those employers as well. If you do want to get into a little bit more detail and kind of understand the applicant beyond the financial and the residence history, tap into the references as well. So these are really the people who know the applicant best. So consider requesting references from colleagues or family members or friends of the applicant who can really give you a good idea of who they are as a person. They can also state on the application if they have any pets, and these can include pets for leisure use, or also if they have a need for an emotional support animal, things of that nature. And then finally, you can request miscellaneous information, such as if the applicant is a cigarette smoker, or if they have any bankruptcies on their record as well. When it comes time to pull the screening reports, these are a couple of options that you can include as part of the package. The first is the credit report. So a credit report is really ideal if you want to get a full financial picture of each individual applicant. So it'll include a history of the applicant's payments, and it'll also give you an idea of if they've been making those payments consistently, and it'll also be a good future indicator if they were able to pay the rent on time and consistently as well. Secondly, a screening report can also include a background check. So in this cases, if you want to pull additional information from the background check, you can actually include a couple of these pieces that are mentioned here on the slide. Thirdly, you can also request an eviction history report. So in this case, it's really a good preventive measure since evictions can often cost thousands of dollars to request an eviction history report to see if they have any on the applicant's record. And finally, an important piece to consider as part of the screening suite as well is having an identity verification step. So in this case, kind of having the applicant confirm their identity in a couple of ways, such as providing their SSN or again, a copy of their driver's license to you. Now, going off of that last point, verifying the applicant information, the first is, again, collecting the SSN or the driver's license. So this is one of the easiest ways to confirm the identity of each applicant. Secondly, tapping into their current and previous landlords. So these individuals will give you an idea of how long the applicant stayed at their property and if they have a history of paying the rent on time, and also if they were given the full security deposit back, things of that nature. Thirdly, reaching out to not only their current, but also their previous employers. So this will give you an idea of how responsible the applicant is and if they have a steady work history. And then directly correlated off of that point is their income. So the employer will be able to give you an idea of the applicant's salary, but also if you want to get a little bit more detail, you can request pay stubs and bank statements. So those pieces of information will again give you a bit of a background into the applicant's finances and let you determine if they're qualified to meet the criteria for your property. And finally, tapping into their references, again, personal and professional, will give you an idea of who they are beyond the components that I mentioned earlier. When it comes time to issue a decision, there's a couple of different actions you can take here. The first is acceptance. So if the applicant meets all your conditions and all your screening criteria and they have no check marks on their record, you can choose to accept them on the lease without any conditions. Now, in some cases, this may not always happen. So an applicant may not meet your minimum credit score requirements, or they may not meet your minimum rent to income ratio. In that case, if you do really feel strongly about them, you can accept them on condition. So in this case, you can request that the applicant have a co-signer on the lease and that they can also pay you a security deposit, which will be refunded towards the conclusion of the agreement. And then finally, another example of an adverse action here is a rejection. So if you're working with a pool of applicants, again, let the chosen applicant know that they've been accepted, but also cover all your bases and let all the other applicants know that they were not considered for the property. And when it comes time to sign the lease, again, really important to have each individual occupant sign their own individual lease and make sure that the terms of the agreement are clearly stated. So again, if it's a 6-month lease or a year-long lease, make sure that all that information is distilled onto the agreement so everyone is on the same page. Now, RentSpree comes in the tenant screening process in a couple of different ways, and we offer you a couple of benefits. The first is that we save you time. So as I mentioned earlier, sometimes screening reports may take 2 or 3 business days to generate. In this case, when the applicant pays the fee and submits the application on our dashboard, the reports are available to you right away. And the applicant will also receive a copy of the report. So it literally takes minutes, about 10 minutes for the applicant to complete the application, and then it'll take less than a couple of minutes for you to receive those reports back to you. Secondly, we also help to reduce your liability since the applicant will not be providing their SSN or payment info to you directly. It really helps you minimize your risk there and by not having to handle all the PII. And thirdly, one of the great aspects of RentSpree is that there's no monthly or annual commitment fee that you need to make to us to use our software. So the only fee involved is on the renter side. Each renter who is applying to a property will pay a $30 fee with a debit or credit card directly to us on the application. So here, I want to quickly go over some of the items that are included as part of the screening suite. The first is the online rental application. So this application is available on both desktop and mobile devices. And we also have the option to generate a car rental application as well. Secondly, we provide a TransUnion credit report. So our exclusive partnership with TransUnion gives you a score, collections, trade lines, and other information that will give you a full idea of the applicant's financial history. I do want to point out here that this credit report is actually a soft pull. So the applicant doesn't need to worry that each time they apply on RentSpree, their credit report will actually, their credit score will not be damaged by the TransUnion report that we generate. Thirdly, we do offer to include a criminal background check as well. So this will include the most wanted databases and a sex offender registry. And then finally, we have the option of providing you with an eviction history report. So this eviction report includes all 50 states as well as Washington, DC, and includes 25 million records. So again, that's just to prevent you, give you an idea of their past and to see if there's no potential indicators of anything happening in the future. And all these four options here, the rental application, the credit report, and the criminal and eviction report, are available for the sole cost of $30. Once the applicant pays and submits the report, you do have the option of sharing the screening reports directly from the RentSpree dashboard. So since the reports actually don't have a particular property address listed on them, if the applicant does not get accepted towards a property, they can actually use the report for another property. So if you wish, you can share the report with another landlord, even if that landlord isn't a member of RentSpree themselves. And then finally, if it's your responsibility to communicate decisions for the rental property, you can do so directly from the RentSpree dashboard itself. So you can customize an acceptance or denial letter directly from the RentSpree dashboard and send that off to all members of the applicant pool. So now that I've gone through a couple of the benefits of RentSpree and what it can offer you, I'm going to go through a live demonstration. So I'm going to switch my screen here. And you'll notice here that you're in the right place if you see crmls.rentspree.com in the address bar. And you will also notice the CRMLS logo right here in the top left. So the first option that you can take here is to request a demo. So if you request a demo, this will give you a calendar, which will give you the availability of our RentSpree customer support staff. So if you would like a quick walkthrough of our software, simply select a date and a time and type in your first and last name, your email, and your phone number. And what this does is that once you get the email confirmation, a RentSpree representative will be notified and they will call you and email you at the time that you have selected. And they will go through and give you a 10-minute overview of the software, just in case you need any additional clarification. So to start screening, it's really simple. Select Start Screening here. And you'll notice that this page says Create a RentSpree account. So if you do have a CRMLS account already, you can click Continue. In this case, we're going to type in our email address and a strong password of 8 or more characters. And then click Sign Up with Email. Now, in this screen, you'll notice that you have a couple of different options for using RentSpree. The first is if you're an agent representing either a landlord or an applicant, but you can also use RentSpree if you own properties yourself, or if you're a property manager working on behalf of a landlord. So there's a couple of different ways that you can use our dashboard. So we'll select I'm an agent here and select Continue. Accept the agreement. And once that's done, you'll be taken directly to the RentSpree dashboard. So consider your RentSpree dashboard to be your home base. In this dashboard, you will be given the list of the properties that you have active on RentSpree, and you can actually search for the properties here, and you'll be able to add a new listing. So to start screening the applicants, simply click on Select Screening Applicants here. And here you're going to want to type in your residential address or also your office address. And in this screen, you'll be taken to the option that says Add New Property. So in this case, this will be the address of the property that you will be collecting the screening applications for. So simply type in the address, the city, the state, and the zip code here, and select Next. And notice now that you have a couple of different options to screen regarding payment. So 90% of the time, the applicant will bear the cost of the screening and pay the $30 directly to RentSpree. However, in some cases, if you don't want to burden the applicant with any extra costs, or if you do wish to charge them a higher screening fee, you can always select the option that you will pay for the screening. But in this case, we'll select that the applicant will pay. And in this option, when you can select the screening items, it's really an a la carte option. So if you're working with a sizable pool and you want to just simply collect the rental applications first, you can certainly do so. And then when you want to come back and reduce the size of the pool, you can start getting a little bit more in depth and then collect the credit report and score as well. And I do want to point out here that you won't be able to select a criminal background check and eviction without first selecting the credit report and score. And a great thing about the credit report and score is that it does include an applicant ID verification step. So what this means for you is that every applicant who applies on RentSpree will be required to answer a series of challenge questions. So these questions include, what was the color of your first car? What street did you grow up on? Things of that nature. And if the applicant fails to answer those questions correctly multiple times, they will actually be locked out of the RentSpree system. So this is just to provide you an extra layer of security and kind of, again, confirm the applicant's identity. So once you've made your selections, simply click Next here. And you will be taken to the options to screen. So the first option that you will see here is to request screening reports via email or mobile. So in this case, if you've collected emails from your applicant pool, you can actually enter more than one email here. So we're going to go ahead and enter some email addresses here. To enter more than one, simply click. And then once that's done, simply click Send Request. Now, once you've hit Send Request, your job as an agent using RentSpree is pretty much done. So the ball is now in the applicant's court to start submitting the application and paying the fee to RentSpree. If you weren't able to collect all the email addresses, you can always select Request by text message here, and you can actually enter multiple phone numbers as well. And what that does is that it sends an automated text to each applicant with the unique link to apply for that particular property. The second option to screen here is to share the lease link. So in this option, if you're advertising your property on your personal website, a brokerage site, or even your social media, or the private remarks section of the MLS, you can actually copy and paste this lease link directly there. So the applicant will not only see a description of the property and the screening criteria, they'll be actually given a link to apply for the property right then and there. So it's really a great, neat time-consuming feature there, time-saving feature, which will again kind of like streamline the process for you. And then finally, a really great option once showings and open houses are happening again, you can choose to print out the screening handout here, which you can add a custom message to. So in this case, just select Print. And when you select Print, it'll give you a brief overview of what the handout looks like. So in some cases, an applicant will go to a property, they'll have the walkthrough and they'll ask you, what are the next steps? I really like this place, what can I do to apply? There's always that minute of confusion. If they have to go home, fill out some paperwork, start scanning documents and email them back. So by having the screening handout, it'll include the name of the agent and their phone number and email, but also the different items that are part of the screening package. So you'll notice here that these are the different items, the 4 items that we included in the previous screen. So all the applicant needs to do is simply scan the QR code here with their smartphone or other mobile device, and they'll be taken directly to the link, again, for this particular property. So again, this is a really great option if you choose to meet applicants in person and want to really streamline the process from there. So once the applicant pays the $30 directly to RentSpree and submits the report to you, you're going to receive an email and a notification in your dashboard. So if you go back to your dashboard here, you will notice that the address is listed here, and you've requested 2 applicants to fill out the screening report. So to get a little bit more detail, simply select on the property address, and you will notice that we have the 2 emails listed here that we've sent the request to, and you can also see the status. So you'll notice that the renter hasn't actually started filling out the application. And the way that it works is that you don't even have to worry about following up with the applicant, since RentSpree sends an automated email to each applicant's email, notifying them and reminding them to apply for the property. So once you go back here to all listings, and let's say you've made a rental decision and you want to prevent further applicants from applying to the property. So all you need to do there is simply select actions here and select deactivate this property. So once you select deactivate the property, that will actually prevent further applicants from paying the fee and from doing any further screening. Now, in some cases, things may fall through, your chosen tenant may back out for whatever reason, and you want to relist the property on RentSpree. So to do that, simply navigate here to the top left and select inactive properties, and click on the property again, and you'll notice there is a link here to select reactivate. So if you click reactivate, the property will now show up as active on the listing, and applicants will be allowed to pay the $30 fee and start screening once again. So now that I've shown you how to apply on RentSpree and how to set everything up on your dashboard, I'm going to show you an example of a completed report. So you'll notice here that the applicant has completed the screening process because the status is now changed to ready. And you will notice that the applicant's high-level information is listed here. So you can see that they have their credit report listed, they have 0 check marks on their background check and 0 evictions in their history. And it'll also state their monthly income, which they put down on their application as well. So to access the report, simply click on their name. And this will take you to the actual document itself, which will give you all the detailed information that you had requested that the applicant include as part of the screening. So to jump to different sections, simply click on the top here, and this will actually change based on the items that you have selected. So you can actually jump to the credit report as well, which will give you, again, all the detailed financial information as well. And then jump to the background check and eviction here at the top. So there's a couple of different things that you can do with the report if you want to view it at a later date. I just want to give everybody a reminder that these reports live on RentSpree's site for 30 days. So they're stored securely in the cloud for 30 days. So only you, the agent, and the applicant will be receiving a copy of these reports. If you do wish to share the reports with another landlord, so in the event that an applicant does not get accepted for one property, you can actually share the report here on the top right with another agent securely from the dashboard. And then finally, you can view the report offline by printing it as well. And then finally, you can save the report as a PDF. So saving the report as a PDF is an option if, for example, another landlord does not have RentSpree. You can actually save it and then send it via email, and that way the landlord will still be able to access it. So there's a couple of different ways that all the parties involved can access the reports themselves. But again, they are live on the RentSpree site for 30 days just to minimize liability. So now that I've shown you an example of a completed report, I'm going to go back to the presentation here. And just to remind everyone that the fastest way to access RentSpree would be to navigate to crmls.rentspree.com. And we are also available on the CRMLS marketplace. So if you navigate to the marketplace, you'll notice that we have a RentSpree tile available. So that will take you directly to the co-branded landing page that I showed you earlier in the demo. And If you have any questions or how to use RentSpree or to request a demo, feel free to email us. The best email would be support, that's SUPPORT @rentspree.com. And another reminder as well that this webinar will be recorded. So if you have any friends or colleagues who are interested in the content today, we'll be more than happy to send you a recording via email to those of you who have registered. I want to thank everybody for their time today, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you so much.